Powered by Sports Interaction.
Want to bet? Then get in on the action at Sports Interaction. The boys of summer are back on the diamond and March Madness is on deck. Bet pre-game, live in play, or on one of our many prop bets. Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. Or in Ontario, download the app now using the QR code at the bottom of the screen. 19 and older, and please play responsibly. Oh, I think. Oh, my audio was not working. Oops. uh, let's try that one more time. It's one of those games. It's one of those games. All right, let's try that again. Cut. Let's go. Welcome back to Game Over Toronto, where the Leafs were continuing their Western Conference woes. This is a game that we took on against the Vancouver Canucks, where we were tied 1-1 going into the second. And what happened in the third? We collapsed. When you have 3 goals occurring in the third, it's no fun. When 2 of them are due to shorthanded goals, even worse. But what is the nail in the coffin is the fact that those 2 shorthanded goals occurred on the same penalty kill. That's right, the same penalty kill. But at least we have our fan favorite, Sean Fitz-Gerald, here to help break down the show. Sean, the second time's the charm. Maybe finally the audio's working. But yeah, I mean, what a game. I'm so sorry that you had to watch that and come on to Game Over Toronto to help break this game down. This was a shame.
Just for clarity, so the first time we went through when your audio wasn't working, you called this a third period collapse of a lifetime.
Yes.
Just for context, what third period collapse might it have been worse than?
Listen, we've had a lot of third period collapse. I don't know if this is worse than the Boston ones, but ooh, did I say it?
Did you just put this in the same category as it was 4-1 in Boston?
I might have.
Oh my goodness. Is this where we're starting with this?
It was bad. Was it not? Was it not horrible?
I mean, it wasn't good. I mean, Austin Matthews is sitting somewhere in a dressing room in Vancouver with, at best, a bruise on the inside of his leg, at worst. That, if you're wearing a Leaf jersey, as you are, probably isn't the greatest news in the history of the world. I mean, Luke Shen laid a couple of hits. John Tavares got hit hellaciously twice and got up. I mean, they get to continue this Western road swing all the way through New Jersey on Tuesday, so maybe that's a happy ending. I don't know. Like, there just wasn't a lot, right? Like, they came out and I mean, and what, like 15 seconds in, Luke Shen lays a big hit. So you're like, okay, maybe this is going to be the statement game that everybody thought, okay, well, you know, right after the trades, everybody gets in, everybody catches up with the team. You know, they're all sort of, you know, they got the jet lag or the wobbly legs, and nobody knows each other's name fully yet. I don't know. They don't have the jersey press, whatever excuses you wanted to make. Like, it's going to take time to adjust. 15 seconds in, Luke Shen just pops somebody, right? You're like, okay, this is the statement game. And then, like, John Tavares gets absolutely just smoked. And you're like, okay, that's okay. Fight, sure. Got a player missing 17 minutes because of an instigator in a game and a 10-minute major. Eh, and then they just never, I don't know. Like, I refuse to believe that a Rick Tocchet defense did this to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I refuse to believe that, as it was suggested on the broadcast, that this was somehow due to the coaching ingenious of Rick Tocchet. But the fact remains, like, the Toronto Maple Leafs managed one goal against a team that I'm gonna have to look again to make sure I was looking the standings upside down, but I don't think the Canucks are near the top of where you wanna be in the standings. So, yeah, like, as with a lot of this Western swing, there's just not a lot of positive to take out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those interesting games. You mentioned that the Vancouver Canucks are in the bottom of the standings. This is probably a game that they probably wanted to lose as well. It's one of those games where probably both teams lost at the end of the day, right? And it was interesting because, yeah, like you said, Luke Shen getting a great hit off, but I also like the way that the way that McCabe was able to defend JT when JT got hit by Meyer, a big body.
Mhm.
McCabe was right there throwing hands and really
And
saying
got
that.
flipped over like he was on a merry-go-round
Yeah,
or Ferris
exactly.
wheel, sorry, like, that could have ended like, honestly, in all seriousness, and I'm full disclosure, I don't like fighting in hockey, for a bunch of reasons I'm happy to get into, but, like, on the boards, like, they both narrowly missed really nasty collisions in the intersection between the ice and the boards there in the corner because they both rotated.
Hmm.
I mean, is that answering for something? I don't know, man, like,
Well, you
I
gotta
still I
set
still
the
don't buy, like,
precedent a
it's
little bit, right? Like
but it's a hit. Like, Luke
yeah.
Schenn comes out and says, "Hey, we're gonna be hitting today."
Uh-huh.
And then John Tavares gets hit by, and again, I watched 2 or 3 replays just like everybody else. I'm like, "Well, it seemed okay to me." And so you gotta fight for that now? I don't know. Fighting's
Yeah.
dumb. Like, we know too much about what repeated head trauma can do to these guys. Anyway,
Hmm.
and that's a whole separate tangent.
For sure, for sure.
Everybody's cranky. Everybody's watching this saying, "Shut up, move on to something else." And you're right too. We'll get into
Yeah.
the anti-fighting thing another time.
All right, all right. But yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that first goal because it was tough. Matt Murray, he's back in net for us after being away for a while, right? And I thought he looked pretty good, right? He looked
And a
fantastic.
couple amazing toe saves too.
Exactly.
Like, he really found a way to get to the puck, find, you know, traffic. I mean, that was a 2-on-1. Was it 2-on-1 where he stretched out and made that incredible right toe save? Like,
Hmm.
looked pretty good to me.
Exactly, exactly. And that the goals that went in against him were not really his fault, right? I mean that first goal, the Kuzmenko goal, right?
Mhm.
That took a deflection first of all off of Kuzmenko and then also off of Hall
Paul.
as well, right? And Murray just has no chance. There's just not enough time for him to react to that situation. And then we talk with the two shorties. Those are two breakaway goals essentially, right? It's tough. He was put into a position where he had to stand on his head, and the team kind of let him out to dry, especially in that third, right? Um, the one positive, at least he looked pretty good on his return. That's great to see, but the team just needs to really shore up defensively. I think what I noticed a lot was they just weren't handling the puck correctly. It looked like they were getting some weird passes off and there were interceptions being made. They just weren't able to hold on to it. And that led to a lot of, for example, these shorties, right? So what were your thoughts on what kind of went wrong in that penalty or that power play situation for the Leafs?
I think Adam Wilde actually put it right on Twitter after the game. It's like, it's just one of those games where you just want them to get home and maybe have a practice and
Mhm.
say, "Oh, hello, my name is," and you might be, and actually get to work with some of the new faces, right? Like, it is a change. Like, forgetting setting aside the fact that I think Rasmus Sandin had about 10 points tonight for Washington, right? Um, but yeah, like, they do have a bunch of new people. You do have, you know, some adjustment that you have to make, and it's tough to do when you're 3 time zones away, and you've been on the road for a while. I mean, if you're taking a look, I think if you're taking a look at this from, like, the top line, what do you take away from this? I mean, the first one is yeah, like, what is the extent of what happened to Austin Matthews there? I mean, Kevin
Mhm.
Bieksa, during intermission, and he's pretty level with this kind of stuff, right? Like he said that, I think he was talking about a teammate. I don't think he named the teammate, but said that, when they took it on the inside of the knee once, the impact was enough to actually impact the ligament. There was a
Yeah,
partial
there was like
tear.
a
I can't remember
meniscus.
yeah, I can't if he said ACL, MCL, or
I
meniscus,
think he
but like
mentioned
it
the
was something.
meniscus, but yeah,
It was one
definitely.
of the scary. It was one of the scary acronyms, right? Like one of the ones you don't want to hear. So
Hmm.
I think the top line one is like one. Is it just a bruise? Was it a stinger? He came back and he was playing on the wing, and he didn't look like he was the most super mobile when he came back after that, after intermission. So what's his status? And yeah, like developing a level of comfort, I think maybe with the new folks, maybe playing with more than 11 forwards in a game when you're playing this many games on a road trip. Um, yeah, there's just a lot. There's a lot to dig through there. Like I think Austin Matthews has to be the top one. And then yeah, like with some time, there's still lots of time before playoffs. They're gonna get time to practice. They're gonna be home for a bit. I think they'll be able to work out the bits where you could maybe chalk it up to being unfamiliar with each other.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like losing to that Canucks team is in that fashion is not a good thing ever.
Definitely. Yeah, well, let's talk about Matthews then, because we all know, and it's no surprise to anyone, that he has been dealing with injuries, right? He's been playing through them, and Dubas acknowledged that as well during his press conference just a day ago, right? And
Mhm.
again, he gets taken down, and he was on all fours for a long time. He was really shaky to get up. It took a while
It
for him
was
to
a
get up.
blast too. Like it was
Yeah,
every ounce of Juleson's like mass
exactly.
he put in behind that shot.
And he was
Like it's
wobbling
holding
when
down the B button and chill for as long as you can before you release, right?
exactly. Yeah, I can't imagine getting there, because especially there's like minimal padding around there as well. It's
Yeah.
it's it's a tough shot to take.
It's a
And
weird one too because he looked like he was in the lane and it looked like at first you're like, well, maybe he had his back to the play, he wasn't sure where the shot was coming from, but it looked like he knew where the shot was coming from, and yet he still kind of turned.
mhm,
I mean, I was talking to you before, like I spent part of today at an exhibition U12 hockey game. And yeah, like forwards, it's scary when you see people come in and wind up that your reaction is naturally just to sort of turn away and shield. When, fact of the matter is you're safest, not that you're ever safe standing in front of a slap shot, facing it straight up, right? Because all your
mhm.
padding is there. So yeah, Matthews looked like he almost turned. I don't know if he was thinking of chasing a rebound or if he thought he was going to get out of the way. But yeah, like that subtle turn to my eye looked like it exposed like the inside where you don't have plastic covering, you have that maybe a bit of soft padding, and that gets scary because that shot was moving, and at the very least, he's going to have just a giant bag of ice on that knee flying east.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem here is, like, we have 19 games to remain in, right? And we're kind of are locked in into this that slot
Mhm.
of, we're going to be playing Tampa. It just depends on if we're getting home ice advantage or not, right? But
And if John Cooper's going to keep sitting his top three forwards every game, but yeah.
well, maybe we should be doing the same with Matthews, right? He has been coming back from
Well, I
injury.
mean, benching. Cooper was on. He was explaining why he benched. Was it Stamkos, Point, and Kucherov for the third period of their last game?
Oh yeah, he benched all of them,
Yeah,
eh?
he
Oh
did to
wow.
make a point. Yeah, no, I was going to say like if Sheldon Keefe did that, I'm pretty sure there would be a federal inquest held before that second playoff game. But anyway, please continue.
Yeah, but to that point, like, what we're playing against Vancouver, right? A team that we should have beat. Unfortunately, we didn't end up beating them. But do you think that we should kind of be load managing Matthews a little bit, like they do in the NBA, right? You see a lot of the stars towards the end of the regular season, they're taking games off, and just to make sure they are at 100%. Now Matthews right now isn't even at 100%, right? What do you think we should do? Should we rest him? Should we just let him play? What should Keith do in this situation?
That's a fascinating question, isn't it? Like, so even in the NBA now, you started to see, I mean, you mentioned load management. Where did that begin? That was born right in Toronto, right? Like Kawhi Leonard load managed coming off a series of seasons where he'd missed a lot of games due to injury. All of a sudden, oh, he's not playing tonight because it's a back-to-back. It's load management. And he absolutely helps puts the franchise on his back and carries them to the first NBA championship. So load management is a very evocative term, I think, especially in Toronto. But even in the NBA now, you're starting to hear just sort of subtle pushback about that whole concept of load management. I can't remember who it was.
It's been a lot. I know that
Paul George,
even
Paul George, one of the players was coming out and saying it's not preventing injuries, it's making them soft. Now, I don't believe that whole concept of soft because it's a lot, right? Like with what we as spectators and the expectations that fans have, like these guys put themselves through the ringer through 8 months, well, 12 months now of the year, they're all working out. But the question of load management, the thing that I mean, the science, the Leafs would certainly have a lot of people working in that department. The cost benefit analysis of, shutting somebody down and it's that collision with science and old hockey mentality. Remember that there's all those folks who say, if you hold out for 2 weeks of training camp, it's going to take you 6 weeks to catch up, or maybe you're not going to catch up for the whole season because of those critical, 2-a-day practices. I think maybe that's where hockey and new thinking might collide, right? Like
Mhm.
if you sit somebody down for even a couple weeks here, like a couple of, as you said, like relatively meaningless weeks, nobody's really going to catch them. They're not going to catch anybody. You're sort of static. Sit them down. Then you're going to have the debate of, well, he's going to come back. He's going to be rusty. He's going to be a step behind, but et cetera, et cetera. I think that's what you'd run into. So I think, yeah, on the surface, why wouldn't you load manage? You're one of the greatest goal scorers in the league right now to make sure that whatever's ailing them, whether it be now a knee or a wrist or whatever, is at its absolute peak performance when you need them, which is when the playoffs start. Because nobody really cares who wins on Tuesday, right? Like,
Mhm.
do you really care if Matthews gets a goal and 2 assists against the Devils? No, you don't care. You care what happens in game 2 against Tampa in 6 weeks. So, yeah, I mean, I think the rational part of your brain says sit him down until he's fully healthy. But the hockey part of your brain says, oh, if you miss training camp, then you're not going to be normal until January or whatever. If you sit him down now, he's going to be a step behind in the playoffs. I think that's the collision that you'd come into inevitably in this discussion.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that you brought that up because even like yesterday's game, I believe it was Calgary. There was a time where there was a breakaway for Calgary, and then it was Nylander, Matthews, and Riley. So
Mhm.
they had to play. This is our core group here, right? These aren't the different additions that we got added on, and so they do have an inherent chemistry to them, right? And Matthews was caught puck watching while Calgary got a fantastic opportunity and a great shot, right? It luckily bounced off the post and no hoopla was made about it, right? But that's a situation where Matthews was caught lacking a little bit, and then to your point, what if in a couple of weeks we know that he's going to be a great goal scorer, but the other aspects of his game, right, the defensive aspects which we praised him a lot on, is that going to come into question, and also the inherent chemistry that he's going to have to build with his new linesmen. I mean, like we mentioned, there's a ton of new additions here on the Leafs, and Keefe has had his fun tinkering around with the top six quite a bit. I don't think he's fully realized what he really wants out of that top six, and what pairings he really wants to do. Is he going to put O'Reilly or keep O'Reilly on that second line or that third line? So Matthews is going to have to play catch up if he does take some time off. But I definitely think like a healthy Matthews, sorry, is more important than one that's going to take a game or two to get his feet under him and just be consistent, right? Um,
That's one of the things I mean, there's lots to admire about professional athletes in any sport, right? Like I'm not just talking hockey here, but like, the grind. Um, like you thinking of, even Haley Wickenheiser in 2014 at the Olympics, right? Like she was getting up there and everybody knew, I think she was playing like a broken foot. But she was still out there gutting it, right? And
mhm.
and not after every game she's talking about a broken foot. But we all knew she wasn't 100%. But there she was drawing the penalty that led to Marie-Philippe Poulin's, again, another one of her historic goals. Um, at this point in the season, in March, the cliche is all these guys are playing hurt. Like all these guys have something. So one of the things I really admire is that, if, whatever Matthews is dealing with, let's assume he's still, Dubas has said it, so he's been playing hurt. Like, to not come out every day and say, "Look, guys, yeah, no, I'm not scoring on the same pace I did last year because, like Darth Vader, I actually had part of my wrist taken out and it's now, Android or whatever." Like it takes a little bit of time for the mechanics to come back. Like they're playing hurt and he's out there, in the second and third period today, gutting through something that would have kept me at a beer league for 3 months, right? Like you take a shot like that, there's a bruise, it hurts. It's like, I do admire that about these guys that and all of them, right? Like players on both sides, players like they're playing hurt and they're trying to do their best, and they're doing that especially in markets they care under a huge microscope.
Hmm.
So people are, why isn't he scoring? Why is he puck watching? And that's a reasonable comment. I'm not saying that, but like we don't know at this point. Like maybe he does have injuries that prevent him or slow him down just that extra half second where he needs to think, can I get to that? Whereas before, it's obviously he gets to that. I
Hmm.
don't know for sure. I don't have any insight. He didn't text me after the game like he normally would, obviously. Um, but I mean, something to keep in mind, especially at this time of year. Like we just don't know what these guys are dealing with inside.
Yeah, yep, definitely. What were your thoughts on the trade deadline in general that the Leafs had? Do you think Dubas did a pretty good job? Because like we mentioned, there's a ton of turnover, right? We got O'Reilly, we got Achari, we got Lafferty, Luke Shen is back on the team again, which is fantastic. Although he that I believe it was the fourth goal was the one where he wasn't able to quickly get the puck out of our zone. Um, he's back and McCabe's there. We've had a
Mhm.
ton of turnover, right? Um, what do you rate the Leafs, I guess, coming out of the trade deadline? Do you think Dubas has done enough to not only win a series but win the cup? Because that's the
You didn't
ultimate
want to talk
goal.
about those minor league deadline deals made on Friday.
Yeah.
I gotta look at the names here. What? No, no, we're still not there. Um, yeah, it's tough to say. Like it goes back. I mean, if you listen to talk radio in the city, and I do, um, any given day, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they could be talking about goaltending. Tuesday, Thursday, they could be talking about whether, you know, Morgan Riley is the top pairing defender for the playoffs. And then for bonus content on the weekend, they could say, are they gritty enough? But I think the fact of the matter is that all judgment on any of this, and this isn't a cop out, it sounds like a cop out. All judgment on this is going to be reserved until May. If you and I are sitting here doing a post game in May, then we're like, you know what? That was a pretty good trade deadline.
Mhm.
If you and I are at a patio having a ginger ale and a 7-Up in May and the Leafs are out, like, yeah, that probably wasn't the greatest trade deadline. But that's where we are, right? Like, we are now in a stage of this team's development where moves in the time don't really matter. It's all going to be judged. All of this stuff. It sounds really nihilist all of a sudden, but it's all going to be judged on what happens in the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
Because I think after that, if no matter how tough the road's going to be, and it obviously take a look at the East, it's not going to be like the old Norris division. Like these are heavyweight fights coming up. Um, all judgment's going to be suspended till then.
Mhm. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Um, it's tough because I like the moves. I like a lot of the moves that we've made, and I think the Leafs definitely have gotten stronger coming out of the deadline than they were before it, right? But there's a lot of asterisks on whether they're going to be able to get their feet under them, if they're going to be able to gel together. But one thing I can say right now is I'm happy that Dubas kind of went for it, because a lot of the times Leafs fans have been talking about Dubas just never fully committed, and this year he committed. He threw all the chips at the wall. We have that first round for 2023. I think he was probably trying to flip it on
Mhm.
trade deadline day. Wasn't able to find a perfect fit for that, or a perfect return for that. But I think we can applaud him for at least going out there and trying, right? Because I think he did fill a lot of the gaps that we saw, right? In our defense, he really bolstered that. Unfortunately, I don't think we fully have a top two left wing that's set in stone yet. I think Keith has to really do his job and try to figure out who he wants there. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of great additions made, and O'Reilly has been playing well. McCabe is doing playing great. Achari as well. What are your thoughts on that top six though? What do you think? Which lines have you thought worked well thus far in the 2-3 games that we've even seen them together, right? That's the problem. We haven't seen them together for too long, and Keefe has just jumbled these lines up like crazy,
Well, I
pairing
mean, like
each together.
in the first period today, what were the shots? It was like 14-4 at one point, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Like that's that's pretty good. That's pretty good. If you're out shooting teams 14-4, I'm not a huge math person, but I think the probability favors you, right? That you're eventually going to score more goals than they are.
hmm
I mean, there are entire shifts in that first period where, you know, you're thinking, well, this is really environmentally friendly because the Zamboni's only going to have to flood one half of the ice at intermission. They get to save that fuel for the second intermission. Um, but yeah, like a crummy power play, a couple bad breaks, a couple scary moments. I think you don't like seeing Tavares, especially just you know that shot was high. You don't like seeing him bump his head.
yeah.
You don't certainly like seeing Austin Matthews, go down like that. You don't like seeing anybody get hurt. But yeah, there's just what should have been a night of okay vibes,
hmm
even if you scratch out a 2-1 win or a 1-0 loss or an honorable 2-1 loss to Vancouver. It just, yeah, the power play collapse and then the injury questions, it made it a not great Saturday night.
Yeah, definitely. What are your
That
thoughts
doesn't
on?
answer your question. I think to circle back to your question, the top six, like they can take over a game,
Yeah. Well,
right?
what
Like
about O'Reilly though?
any one of those two lines can take over a game. Like they have
Uh-huh.
like Nylander, I mean, that pass to Tavares to set up that goal,
Uh-huh.
like, come on, that's really good.
hmm hmm
I mean, we all know like Mitch Marner, on top of being, one of the most creative players in the league, also can be just an incredible penalty killer and a threat to do to teams exactly what Vancouver did to Toronto tonight, right? Like
Yeah.
he can peel off and he can be a huge asset on the PK too. It's just, it's like that stretch in October where they lost 4 games and all of a sudden, we're asking is Sheldon Keefe going to get fired? I think
Ironically,
Nick
also another
Kypreos,
Western Conference road trip too.
I think Nick Kypreos at one point said if they don't win by the Pittsburgh game, then he's going to get fired or something like that. Um, but yeah, like you go through stretches like that. They've had a really good season. They're still going to have a good season. They've got, elite top end talent. Do they have questions in goal related to health and consistency? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do they have questions on defense? Would you like Morgan Riley to get back to, we're talking full speed to where he was? It still doesn't seem like he's really caught up to that since he's returned from injury.
hmm
He's still a top tier defenseman, even, like you'd think that something like this will return. And I think the good news out of tonight is that, yeah, like there's still 19 games left in the regular season before any of these games start to matter until the point that we care about them.
hmm
What was Steve Dangle, excuse me, his famous line was, I don't care about any of this until the playoffs. I
hmm
think I think I'm at that stage now for this team as an observer, as somebody who just reports on them. Um, for me, I'm not saying I'm mentally checked out of what these games mean in and of themselves,
uh-huh.
but I think as it relates to broader trend pieces heading into the playoffs, I think that's what matters.
So you're not hyper analyzing this Oilers loss and then this loss against Vancouver.
Yeah, I mean, like you'd like to see, especially the Edmonton game, a bit more of a statement there.
hmm
Everybody's talking about the energy and how, you mentioned it off the top, like Kyle Dubas going all in is something you want to see. And, some of the narrative coming back, and I'm here in Toronto, they're out west, but yeah, the players really, it bolstered them to, feel that Kyle Dubas believed in them, that this was the year. And then they go out and Connor McDavid. Um, and then they get past, Calgary. And then they come out and they do to the Canucks nothing. They had a really good first period and then, bad penalty kill and some other lapses.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's enough to really, hit the Staples red button, right? To say it's time for an alarm.
Definitely,
Not even
definitely.
close. Not even close.
Exactly.
Unless, of course, Austin Matthews has something really, really bad with that knee, in which case, yeah, by all means, hit the red button.
Yeah, and I think a great part to see is that even though Matthews has been struggling through injury and he's not producing the same rate as he was last year, the rest of the team has picked up the slack, right? I think the team this year is more well-rounded than they were last year, where they're not super reliant on a couple guys to get the goals in and day out, right? So that's great to see, and that's going to be important come the playoffs and even for the rest of the season, right? Um, but let's circle back a little bit to O'Reilly because he is keeps kind of playing around with keeping him onto the second line where he looked great with Jonathan
He took a
Tavares.
point shot. It looked like he took a shot to the ribs tonight too. It looked
Yeah,
like there was a puck. If I'm, was it the second, maybe the third period?
I think it
It
was the
looked like
second. Yeah.
a point shot, and it looked like he was a little bit stung too. But I think he stayed on the ice. He
Mhm.
didn't go off. But I'm like, that's not something you like to see either.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely.
Remember Joffrey Lupul years ago crossed in front of a Dion Phaneuf slap shot and ended up breaking. He hit him in that space between the glove and the elbow, and it ended up breaking his part of his forearm, and he was out for weeks.
That
Like anytime that happens, you're like, that's just don't don't hit a shot you're not expecting to block.
yeah,
Just don't.
exactly, and it's so quick and it's a quick lapse, and then you're done for a while, right? We don't have
Well,
time left before the playoffs. Be
well,
safe out
that's
there.
exactly it. No, like that's the thing. Like, so best laid plans. Like Kyle Dubas can do all this. We will get to talk to O'Reilly. I swear, I'm not trying to dodge the question here, but like, um, yeah, like best laid plans. Like you could have a night like tonight, right? Like John Tavares gets shoulder to the chest.
Mhm.
Uh, Matthews we've talked about a lot. Like that's the thing. That's the thing. Like it really just matters how everybody's going to be before game one.
Yeah,
Just 19 game preseason is what this is basically.
exactly. And I think that they are making strides. I mean, they looked better. It started off with a terrible loss against the Oilers. They looked better against Calgary today. It was just a blip. Honestly, that third period, um, unfortunate. I won't really draw too much on it because again, it is a Vancouver game. They're tired, but it was a horrendous like third period in general. But yeah, I mean, we still have 19 more games, and we have the Devils on Tuesday, and we're playing against the Oilers again on Saturday, and there's quite a big gap between that. So they play the Devils on Tuesday, and then they have a
Okay,
couple
3 days
days.
off to
Yeah,
to recover and practice. Yeah.
exactly. I think that's going to do the team some good, and it's nice at least that they have some time for these guys, like you mentioned, a couple guys that got dinged up a little bit, get some time off and recover and readjust, see how they're
For a
going to go
lot of
from
them to
there.
find a place to live. Like for these guys who joined the team on this road trip, like where's Luke Shen staying? Like did he keep his place in Toronto? Probably not. Like
Yeah,
it's a good thing they had those 3 days to like get the hotel room keys all lined up.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's really not a lot more to talk about in this game because they had some troubles, but it's one of those games. It's just one of those games. But yeah, what
Really interesting. A sidebar. The shorthanded thing. So,
yeah.
you go back and you take a look at those two Vancouver goals.
Hmm.
Um, I wonder, like, it's what Marner does really, really well.
Hmm.
Um, but that whole concept of it's kind of outdated, but especially at 4v5, where you get the puck and you just fire it down. I think this is something that is being sort of evolved. I'm going to phrase this wrong, but it's late and it's Saturday night. Yeah, evolution is taking it out of the game where teams. I can't. I have to go back and look at the film, but especially when they start playing the umbrella on the power play,
Hmm.
sometimes you only have one person at the point playing center field on the blue line, right?
Yeah.
That's a horrible mixed metaphor. But I'm wondering if part of the evolution of the PK is you actually really do start to recognize that as a counterattack possibility, right? So, I
Hmm.
mean, you have your point person shifting to be at the center of the blue line, so you can have somebody else down on the wall, right?
Yeah.
So you take your second point person, you sort of shift, right?
Uh-huh.
And you have maybe two people in front. So what that leaves is you have that one person. So if at the 4v5, you do sort of draw up schematics of if you get the puck over here, you do have somebody really attacking, as opposed to flipping it down the ice and letting them reset and recharge and come back at you, that you use it as a counterattack point. And Marner does that. I can't remember who he did that. Scored a shorthanded goal 2 or 3 weeks ago at home, where it was that same thing where he's tracking back, sees that he can make a play, makes a bit of a risk, goes down to try and block a pass. And if he misses it, it could be a 2-on-1, but he gets it. And instead of just turning around and reefing it back down the ice, he forges a counterattack. I think it was a 2-on-1 with Kampf, and he ends up holding it and shooting it and going. Like in USA hockey, for youth level players, you're not allowed to ice the puck shorthanded.
Hmm.
It's blown dead, and there's a defensive zone faceoff, just like it was if it was 5v5. So in the US, they're actually trying to teach kids, hey, look, treat this as a counterattack. And I think, Vancouver highlighted what that can do if you do have that mentality.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
doesn't really have anything to do with the Leafs as it is today, but it's just interesting to, like, historically what we viewed the PK as versus what it can be.
Uh-huh. Exactly. And I think that happened against the Leafs a couple times. I can't remember if it was against the Oilers or against Calgary. They became a blur because I did both those game overs as well. They were
Like,
late
isn't it like
games.
6 or 7 shorthanded goals? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lot of shorthanded goals against this year.
exactly. And it's exactly that same play that you're talking about. And it works surprisingly well because you'd assume that they'd be vulnerable on defense, but when they're
Yeah,
able to get a pass out, especially when you're against a team that isn't collecting the pass super well, like the Leafs have been the last couple of games,
right.
why not capitalize on it? And they got some great passes, and it was the same two guys over and over that got those two shorties, right? It was who was it, Peterson and
Yeah,
Miller, I believe.
Pedersen got the
Pederson
one,
and
and
Miller.
I can't remember who got
I
the
think it
other
was
one. Yeah.
Miller. Yeah, it was
Okay.
same
Yeah,
two guys.
Pedersen got the one, gave him the 2-1 lead.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting the way that they adapt and evolve the power play. I think it's gonna be cool. It's like one of those things where I was really hoping that the 5 forward power play would work out, but it never ended up happening. Yeah, it's fun. The league is in a fun spot where you have some great guys out there, some fast players, and they're able to showcase their skills. But yeah, I mean, I think that's gonna do it here from us. We kind of went through the entire game. We talked about all the different highlights and lowlights of the Leafs
The
as well.
discussion about the highlights was very, very brief, though.
Yeah,
Just to be
exactly,
clear.
exactly. The one highlight, I mean, Murray. That's it.
And Luke Shen. Luke Shen had a hit 15
And Luke
seconds
Shen.
into the first
And
period.
he also had a bad turnover that led to that fourth goal as well. But yeah,
Nylander's pass to Tavares was also pretty good.
there you go. So there's some positives here and there that they can build on.
Is that 3? Is that 3 or 4? Anyway.
3. There you go. That's some positives they can build on, and hopefully they can build on that against the Devils, which is going to be coming up on Tuesday. But yeah, that's going to do it here from us. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Thankfully we don't have to we're not ending our week on a game like this, so you can sleep on it and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Sean, where can the people find you?
Where can they find me?
On
Probably
Twitter.
shoveling snow still. Yeah, no, I'm on Twitter. I'm at The Athletic. Either one of those 2 places.
Perfect. And again,
Or shoveling snow.
or shoveling snow, yeah.
Probably shoveling snow.
Today was horrible. Thank
It was
God
not
tomorrow I'm going snowboarding, so at least we have some fresh snow for it. So this is gonna be fun.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah. Well, and you can find me, Harnish_Patel98 on Twitter. And again, have a fantastic rest of your day. That's here from us from Game Over Toronto. Good night, everyone.
Game over! Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.